शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगं शान्तिर् द्यौ शान्तिर्दिशः शान्तिरवान्तर दिशा शान्तिरग्निः शान्तिर्वायुः शान्तिरादित्यः शान्तिः चन्द्रमा शान्तिर्नक्षत्राणि शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिर्वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्गौ शान्तिरजा शान्तिरश्वः शान्तिः पुरुषः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिर्ब्राह्मणः शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः शान्तिर्मे अस्तु शान्तिः. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
Today's song is on very sweet.
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Our subject today is the purpose of a retreat. And I think the song that we had in the beginning probably sums it all up. So what I'm going to say, it will be more or less a commentary, you might say, for what the essential purpose, meaning and purpose of retreat are. It is indeed a time of sacred rest, and once we are able to experience that sacred rest, the day indeed becomes very sweet. The word retreat itself, as we are aware, has several meanings and is used both clearly as a verb and it can be used as a noun. Now, in general, the word retreat denotes an act of pulling back or withdrawing, often from something which is unpleasant or dangerous. The word is used in many different contexts, in different fields. In the military, for instance, the word is used to, often used in times of surrender. If the enemy is too powerful, then the armed forces have to withdraw. And that's called a retreat. Sometimes there is what is sometimes called a tactical retreat. That not necessarily that you're losing, but you have some war plan to kind of ambush the enemy or well, all those. I don't know too much about it, but the word retreat gets used in military context also. Also, it denotes a bugle call or a drum beat to signaling the lowering of the flag at sunset on a military base. The ceremony of lowering the flag is also called a retreat. For those of you who are veterans or have experienced armed forces, this you'll know more about the military meanings of the word retreat. Retreat, of course, are also the names of places. There are 4 towns in the United States called retreat. One each in Indiana, in Maryland, in Wisconsin, and New Jersey. So if you are living in those towns, you are perpetually in retreat already. But clearly there is also a spiritual meaning of the word retreat, which is really the primary focus of our reflection this morning. Now, as used in a spiritual sense, the word retreat often means withdrawing from the world, however temporarily, and spending time in prayer, in meditation, in study. And the retreats are really been a part of most of the world religions. Those of you who are familiar with Ramakrishna's teachings and conversations know that he often says, you find this coming again and again in that book, The Gospel of Ramakrishna, saying, retire now and then into solitude and think of God. And he suggests 3 places we could retire to. In the mind, retire in your mind, or retire in the corner of your house, corner of your room maybe, or to a forest. In Bengali, it's very alliterative words. It says, mone, kone, bone. So, mone in mind, man in Sanskrit. So, retire in your mind. Kone means in some corner of place or in a forest. And in the Vedantic tradition, so the retreat has been almost a part of life. So the daily practice of worship, prayer, meditation is a form of retreating within. And the place we go to is within our own heart, in our own mind. Oftentimes in doing some kind of a ritualistic worship or on personal prayer or meditation, many families have a small family kind of a shrine. If either there is a separate room dedicated for the purpose, or it could be just in the corner of a room. So that is one place sometimes people go to pray or to meditate and to worship. And of course, periodic visits to a secluded place. Not necessarily a forest, but a place which provides some solitude. There were some forms of austerities or observances in the Vedantic tradition. Sanskrit they are called vratas, which needed this retiring into a secluded place to practice more intensive forms of prayer and meditation. And in the ancient Indian scheme of things, the third stage of life was in fact called vanaprastha, retiring into the forest. After one has passed through the stages of studentship, to the marriage stage, when the children have grown up, you hand over the responsibilities to the children to carry on the family traditions, and then the elderly parents. Today we might say retirement homes. In olden days, they just retired into the forest. Not to live under trees, but there used to be these ashramas where these great rishis and sages lived. And so so you could kind of say there were kind of retirement homes in olden times. The ashramas where the elderly parents then retired and spent as much time as they could in prayer and meditation. So this kind of a retreat has been a part of life in the Vedantic tradition for centuries. In the Buddhist tradition, clearly, Buddhism itself being a reform movement within Hinduism, retreats have been a part of the tradition right from the beginning. Buddhism began originally, primarily, as a monastic tradition. And the lives that these early Buddhist monks led was a very wandering life. But the 4 months in India, being a tropical country, the 3 seasons, cycle is different from the one we have here. So the primary 3 seasons there are the summer, the winter, and they call the monsoons, or the rainy season. Now, wandering from place to place as these monks did, it was easier to do in summer and in winter. But in the 4 months of the rainy season, the monks stayed in one place. And so that, in sometimes Sanskrit, both the Hindu monks and then later Buddhist monks, they call Chaturmasya, means really 4 months. And so they didn't travel during those 4 months. They stayed in one place and spent time in prayer, fasting, meditation. In Buddhistic tradition, that period came to be known as Vasa, again from Sanskrit, meaning staying. And it involved periods of silence and meditation. In Zen Buddhism, the retreats are called by the name session. In Christianity, the retreats also have been there right from the beginning. And it derives its authority from the 40 days that Jesus spent in praying and meditating in the wilderness. And you see that how ancient the practice is, even in the Christian tradition, when you see retiring into the forest, you read the lives of the early desert fathers, and so on. In retreats in their modern form have really come down they were established by St. Ignatius of Loyola, 15th, 16th century. He was the founder, as some of you might know, of the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits. In 1922, he was made as the patron saint of spiritual retreats by Pope Pius XI. So he's officially recognized his contribution to the modern forms of retreats in the Christian tradition, especially among the Catholics. And so Christians, both Catholics, Protestants, even Orthodox Christians, they organize and participate in the retreats throughout the year. Among Sufism, the retreats are called khalwa, and they denote the act of total self-surrender, self-abandonment, as if you literally translate it, to experience the presence of the divine. Now, in complete seclusion, these early Sufi mystics, they continuously repeated the name of God. Not very different from what in Vedanta tradition we might say japa. And in the Sufi tradition, they call it dhikr, which means remembrance of God or meditation. So this is just a very brief view to see how retreats in a spiritual context have been a part of all major world traditions, faith traditions. Now, why is a retreat necessary? One thing is obvious, that most of our life is spent thinking about the world, thinking about others. Because our duties, our responsibilities, our hopes, our fears, everything really involves the others, involves the world. It's not as if there is too much choice that we have. There is this well-known verse in the Katha Upanishad. It goes like this: Paranchikhani vyatrinat swayambhuhu tasmat parang pashyati nantaratman kaschid dhiraha pratyagatmana maikshat avritta chakshuhu amrutatvam icchan. It's a beautiful verse, often quoted. What it means simply is this. It says that the divine being has destroyed our senses in a metaphoric sense by making them go outward. Because really, all of the problems, so to speak, or the stress, the anxiety, the worry that we all experience in life comes through our engagement with things outside of us, things, people, places. And that's pretty much what our senses are doing all the time, kind of acquiring sensory data from the world outside. So we open our eyes and we effortlessly see things and people and forms and color outside of us. The sounds are continually going in, and so on. So we really don't have too much choice, because that's all that our senses do. They go outward and get information, whether we want it or not, whether we like it or not. Even there are times when we don't want it, and yet we cannot stop thinking. Those of us who have attempted prayer and meditation, in the initial stages we know. We said, oh, it's so difficult to concentrate the mind. Why? Because the senses are going out. I can't stop them. They're continually engaged with things outside. Now, a retreat, therefore, means it's an effort to turn inward. Can I make an effort that these senses, which are naturally going out, stop them, not just close the door, but kind of make them turn inward. So at least for a time, instead of seeing the world, can I see myself? Instead of thinking about the world, can I think about myself? Because it's a tragedy that we know so much about the people around us, the place where we live, the world in which we live, but we know so little about ourselves. And so if we spend all our lives gathering information about everything and remain totally ignorant about who we ourselves are, then not only is it tragic, but this ignorance about ourselves is the primary cause of all our major problems. And so our understanding of others will become complete, will become clear only if we first understand our own selves. And that is why a retreat can be seen as a form of turning inward, of thinking about oneself. Now, we can think about ourselves in a very unhealthy way. That's a kind of narcissism. We're just being self-absorbed and then forget that the rest of the world exists. Now, that's bad. Now, when I say think about yourself, it's not in a narcissistic way, but as an opportunity, a time an exercise for self-reflection, for self-examination. As I think it was Socrates or Aristotle, well, whoever, it doesn't matter, because it's really a great, I like this when he says an unexamined life is not worth living. And as sometimes a corollary is mentioned to that, an unlived life is not worth examining either. So we want our life to be worthy of its name, and therefore it needs examination. If somebody else examines our lives and passes comments which are not complimentary, we are offended. So rather than allow that opportunity to others to examine our lives, it's good that we examine our own lives first and make whatever modifications or revisions that may be necessary. So then, having now seen very briefly what the meaning of the word retreat is, the different contexts in which the word is used, what do we hope to achieve through the practice of retreating? What can it do? What is the purpose, in short? And it's possible to say that the purpose of a retreat is at least fourfold. And to make it easy to remember, I would just call them by these four terms: review, reflect, reaffirm, and renew. Four Re's. So let's just take them up one by one and see what are the things that come to mind. First, about review. Sometimes as we go about in our lives, we need an opportunity to review. It's pretty much like if you had undertaken some long project, and even if that project, say, it could be an engineering project, it could be a construction, a big bridge being built across the bay or something, which might take 2 years or 3 years. We know how big our big dig took. So you can have projects which can last for years. But we need to review periodically to know that the project is on schedule, that we haven't made any detour, that things are going correctly. Same is true about our own lives. Sometimes when you are, and this is an example I often like to give, is when you're going on a long drive, for instance. Well, you don't have to be every moment looking at the map, but periodically it's good to make sure that you're on the right road. And this probably has occurred in one way or the other in the lives of all of us, but it happened very dramatically once years ago when I was very new to this country. So probably within a year or two after I came here, I was invited to by our center in St. Louis in Missouri, and they have a sub-center in Kansas City. So after my lectures in St. Louis, the young Swami there was going to drive me to Kansas City. And so we sat and he started driving. This was the first time I was going, so everything was new to me anyway. And so while we were driving, there were just two of us in the car, and we were having some very animated discussion on some Vedantic subject. And after about an hour or two, the Swami who was driving, he said, "Oh, this place looks not very familiar." And well, for me it was all new, so I really couldn't comment one way or the other. And then we continued to drive. After about half an hour, he says, he said, "I really don't remember to have driven on this road before." But he has gone several times to Kansas City before that. And so he himself then was wondering what had happened. And then we pulled over at a gas station. And then just looking at our faces itself, we didn't even have to say we had lost the way. The person there came and said, "Oh, you guys have lost your way." And we said, "Yeah." And he said, "Where do you want to go?" And we said, "Kansas City." And he said, "Welcome to," what is it, Hannibal? It's Mark Twain's place in Missouri? Hannibal? Missouri. Hannibal, Missouri. So we had landed up there. almost kind of 40 or 50 miles off track. Apparently, when we were discussing, we had taken some wrong turn, and we were not reviewing. He was not reviewing. I didn't know the road. Actually, in one sense, it turned out nicely, because I don't think on my own I would have ever, although I'm a great admirer of Mark Twain, it wasn't anywhere on my itinerary that time. And then we asked whether, well, do we have to now take a U-turn and go all the way back? Fortunately, no. He showed us some country paths by which we could again connect back on the highway, which was actually nice, because I could see a lot of the countryside, which I may have missed if I had gone on the highway. So it all turned out well, but we got delayed clearly by at least 2 hours or 3 hours according to our schedule to reach the city. Something like that can happen in our lives as well. And that's not as unusual as we think. So a periodic review is important. I remember when, again, within a few months after I joined the monastery, I was very young, I was still a teenager then, and I was in our monastery in Bombay. And then I remember one gentleman came, was a middle-aged gentleman, he must have been around 50 or so, or maybe more. And he came, I was alone in the office of our center there, and he just came in he just introduced himself and just started crying. I didn't know who the person was, and I was young, I was new, I really didn't know what to do. And so I just was present there, I didn't say anything. And then after a while, I said, calm down, what happened? Why are you crying? What happened? And then he said, he studied in a school and college run by the Ramakrishna order. So he was our student, so to speak. And he said that when he was a student in the college that we run in Calcutta, actually it's the Ramakrishna Mission Sharda Peeth, is Vidya Mandir, very close to Belur Math. So that's where he had studied. And he said that he, as a student, he would say he would every day go for the arati, would meditate every day, and was reading books of Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, and so on. And then he said after he graduated from college, and then he started his career and got busy with his jobs and family, and then he said some 25, 30 years passed. And then suddenly it struck him, that's why he had just come to the center. He said, I had gotten so busy with my life, with things to do and things to take care of, that I completely lost touch with what I was doing as a student, with my prayer, with my study, with my meditation. And then he said, suddenly I looked at myself, and I'm already a 55-year-old man. And he said, 30 years of my life passed by, and I didn't even know how. And then he was crying because he said, my life is wasted. And I said, no, don't, that's not the right way to think about it. But that kind of a regret can come in our lives. And it doesn't have to be 30 or 40 years, but sometime we will see, if we look back at our own life, there were times, there were moments when we were really happy in the place where we were, whether it's in terms of our health or job or study or whatever. And life is very unpredictable in many ways. So there's some things happen in life, and we get busy with something, and then we lose touch with some of the wonderful things that happen. And unless and until we review it periodically, we wouldn't even know that our life has taken a different turn. And time once wasted will never come back. Now this is a kind of a longish way of saying something which is very obvious, that a periodic review will help us make sure that our life is on right track. And this can be done on a daily basis. It can be done periodically. And I think both ways are important. One practice that I have found very helpful, which my own spiritual teacher often used to recommend, and I always recommend it to all Vedanta students, is the end of the day, before you retire to bed, just go through your day's activities in a fast forward mode. It wouldn't even take 5 minutes. And see throughout the day the major things that happened that day. That what are the things you did correctly? What are the things you were happy? Yes, I dealt with this situation in a good way. I said the right thing, I did the right thing, and so on. And there could be things that we were not particularly happy with. The kind of mistakes we may have made that day, kind of stupid things we may have done that day. And it's good to acknowledge it at the end of the day. Recognize a mistake as a mistake. Recognize a stupid thing as a stupid thing and say, yes, I could have done better. But acknowledging one's mistake and knowing how I could have done better then gives me an opportunity, a chance to say, if a similar situation were to come next day or later, I will not make the same mistake again. So reviewing our life on a daily basis gives us a chance, an opportunity to become a better person every day. And so it's a it's something which is small, doesn't take much time, it's very simple, but it's very powerful, very effective. So that's a very helpful practice. And periodically, while every day we can review only that day's activities, you really don't have to review your whole life every day. But I think periodically, it could be any day of your choice. It could be once a year, it could be every quarter. Again, we have to decide what works best for us. It could be our birthday or a New Year day or any day that you decide. That could be a day when it's a day of celebration, fun, you have your cakes and you blow candles and all of that. But it's also a good time to say, okay, now I become a year older. Let me look back at my life, this 1 year's life. Let me think about my last birthday and how did this past year go? And occasionally, it's not a bad idea to then look at your whole life, take a kind of a long, short view, right as far back as you can go in your life, as far back as you can remember from your childhood days, and then just see what route your life has taken. Clearly, we don't have complete control over everything that happens in our life. There are factors and forces which are beyond our control. So while we may not be able to control all the forces that control our life, what we have completely under our control is how I respond to it, how I react to it. Whether that frustrates me, whether that makes me angry, or whether that makes me want to think and reflect over it and see what I can learn from it. So a periodic review is very important, and that's what a retreat can help us do, and learning from our mistakes. So first purpose of a retreat, a personal retreat or a collective retreat, and whichever way you understand and practice retreat yourself, is to review our own life. A second thing comes naturally after reviewing. Once I'm able to review my life, I can then reflect over it. Reflecting over both our strengths and our weaknesses. One way our human existence can be characterized, it's that it's an existence which is a mixture, so to speak. In other words, in a very simplistic way, we speak about heaven and hell. So if heaven is seen as an existence where it's just joy, hell is seen as an existence where it's just pain and sorrow. So it just seems like two extremes of the pole. And the human experience can be seen as somewhere in the middle. That sure, there are joys in life and there are sorrows in life. There are successes, there are failures. And so we are somewhere in the middle. And because we are in the middle, every one of us, if we look at our lives in an honest way, in a neutral way, is that we all have our own strengths and our own weaknesses. So looking at our own life objectively and recognizing what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, is very important. And that becomes possible only through this periodic review of one's life. Only by looking at how we have lived up to this point, we know in what things we are good, in what things we are not good, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. Once we know what our strengths and what our weaknesses are, I think life becomes very simple, because then we know what to do. If I know what my weaknesses are, then clearly I must do whatever is possible to minimize my weaknesses, to eliminate my weaknesses. It can be done one by one. In that great book, The Imitation of Christ, Thomas A. Kempis, he makes a very insightful observation. He said, once something similar, I'm not putting in the same exact words, but this is the idea, that if I can identify my weaknesses or my defects and decide to eliminate just one weakness or one defect per year, it's not really asking too much. Entire year, I'm going to eliminate just one weakness of mine. Even doing that, within a few years, we will see a real inner transformation. We will see that we are much better as human beings than we were a few years ago. And it's really not asking too much. Just eliminate one weakness. I mean, if you can eliminate, it's not like if I can eliminate more, I should do only one, obviously. If you can eliminate more, the sooner the better. But at least one weakness per year would be a great thing. So once we are able to identify what our weaknesses are, what our strengths are, then we know I must do everything to minimize my weaknesses. And second, equally important, is preserve my strengths. None of the strengths are going to be with me all the time unless I do something to preserve it. And that's true with all the talents we may have, whether it's music, whether anything. Even musicians, great musicians, they may have an inborn talent for it, but they need to practice. Because if you are out of touch, you haven't practiced for a long time, then your capacity can get rusted, can be rusted. Well, you know what I mean. Both the terms mean same thing? Rusty is the better word? Or rusty or rusted? Rusty. So, and it can happen, not just in music, it can become in art, it can become if you're a writer, if you haven't written for a long time, then it won't come. If you're a speaker, if you are a cook, if you haven't cooked now that doesn't mean that if you're a good cook, if you haven't cooked for a long time, you still might be able to do, but you kind of need to get back into the groove. Joseph Dwyer, who was a long-standing devotee here, who did music here for many years. Some of you were familiar with him. He passed away a few years ago. He was my first teacher in driving. He taught me driving before I went to a driving school. And one of the things he told me, I still remember, every time winter is about to come. So he said he had been driving for many years, so very good at driving. But he said even after so many years of driving, he said that when it's about to get cold, he said after the first snow, he said I still go to some parking lot in some mall and then just drive around a little bit on the snow just to kind of get used to driving on the snow. Now, as such an experienced, good driver, saying that was really an eye-opener. So that's what I mean, of just being in touch, practicing. Otherwise, we can lose the talent, the strengths that we have. So, eliminating my weaknesses and preserving my strengths. Now, reflecting would also include self-questioning. We can ask ourselves questions such as, have my goals, my priorities in life changed? Am I progressing? Now, the priority changing itself is nothing bad about it, provided that we feel that now my changed priorities in life are taking me closer to whatever goal I have set before myself. The changed priorities in life is now making me a better person, which is good. So we don't have to have a kind of a very rigid goal or a rigid priority saying that nothing is going to change it. But even when change occurs, it's good to recognize that it's change for the better, because the change can occur both ways. So changes are great, provided it's a change for the better. So that's the second thing. So first, retreat will help me review. It will help me reflect. The third thing is reaffirm. So once I'm able to review my life, reflect over my strengths, weaknesses, then I need to reaffirm. Reaffirm my ideal, my goal, my practice. And reaffirmation would mean not just telling oneself mentally, which is okay, but sometimes it is helpful to make that reaffirmation more tangible. For instance, in Vedanta, we often say the body, the mind, the ego are only coverings. I am the spirit, I am the Atman. Now, how can I reaffirm my identity as the Atman? One way of doing it is verbally. There are, for instance, one way is to read some texts which help you reaffirm that identity, which remind you that you are the spirit. There are some great hymns. If you're familiar with Sanskrit, or there are songs which affirm one's spirit nature. There are some Sanskrit hymns which are chanted in the morning. Sanskrit, they are called Pratasmarana Stotra. Really means hymn for morning affirmations or morning remembrance. They are very helpful. So early in the morning, that's why it's good to begin the day with some good self-reminders. So whatever it is that is important to us in life, and as spiritual seekers, our spiritual identity, our spiritual ideal, our practice are among the important things in life. And that's why it's helpful if we can begin the day, as I've sometimes said, that the first word you utter after waking up, and if you're still in bed, you don't even have to get out of the bed. You are sleeping, you wake up, your eyes open. Wouldn't it be great that the first thing my eyes see when they're open is some symbol or picture or something that will remind me of my spiritual goal? Maybe a picture of a deity you worship, or something, anything that reminds you of a spiritual ideal. The first word that I'm able to utter after waking up in the morning, how wonderful it would be if it is some kind of a prayer. Or if you have a mantra received from your guru, his first word you utter could be that mantra to yourself. And same thing with before going to sleep. Before you close your eyes, before you switch off your light, the last thing the eyes will see could be again something to remind you of your spiritual ideal. And that's why I know of many spiritual seekers, devotees, perhaps many of you do it already, to have something near your bed which will remind you of your spiritual identity. And because that would be the thing you're most likely to see before going to bed and after waking up in the morning. So these are the kind of things that are very helpful in affirming our identity. It's not so much about telling others. For instance, our identity as a child of God. If God is our father, God is our mother, then that means I'm a child of God. God just can't be father and then I'm a nobody. Then we say, well, whose father is he? If God is my father, then I'm God's child. Then it's my identity is as a child of God. Now, how can I affirm that identity? It's not about just going on telling everybody, oh, I'm a child of God. But can I look upon others also as children of God? And as I've said often, my ability to look upon others as children of God is directly related to my ability to see myself as a child of God. If I cannot see myself as a child of God, it will be very difficult to see others as children of God. How we see the world is directly related to how we see ourselves. There is the well-known story sometimes told about Yudhishthira. There are these two characters in Mahabharata, the great Indian epic. Yudhishthira is a symbol of someone who is so good. He is a good, honest, truthful person. And in contrast, there is this villainous character called Duryodhana, who was selfish, power-hungry, and all the defects you can point out were kind of lumped into this character. And so the anecdote goes that this Yudhishthira, this good person, was told, why don't you go around and see which is the most evil person around you or in the world? And just the opposite was told to that Duryodhana. He said, go out and see which is the really good and honest person you see around. And then they both come back. And then Yudhishthira says, I wasn't able to find any bad person. I found that every person I met had something good. Nobody was totally evil. And then this Duryodhana comes back and says, I wasn't able to find one good person. Every person I saw, there was some problem or the other. Now what does it show? It just shows we all find what we are looking for. Swami Vivekananda once points out, when people complain and say, oh, this is a very selfish world, this is a terrible world. And then Swamiji says, well, if it's a selfish world, what are you doing here? If you are a part of this world, you must be selfish also. So if we want to know how we are, it's also helpful to see what we think of the world. If I see selfishness outside, if I see evil outside, I may not be evil in the sense I understand evil, but the seeds of evil, the seeds of selfishness are within me. If those seeds were not in my own heart, I would be incapable of seeing it outside. When Ramakrishna saw the same world, he just saw it filled with the bliss of the divine. He just said it's the divine mother filling the world. Because within him, there was just divine mother. And therefore, outside of him, there was a divine mother. So, the world that we see is a mirror of our own mind. And so I think that's something very helpful to remember also. So reaffirming would mean recognizing how we are related to God and find ways and means of reminding ourselves of that ideal again and again. And finally, renewing. What retreat will help us do is renew ourselves. Renew clearly means becoming new again. We know one of the reasons why all of us look forward to a weekend or some vacation is because when we go on a vacation, we do something different from what we do every day. And this kind of a change of place, a change of work, or some kind of a recreation refreshes us. We kind of become new again. And then, of course, that newness doesn't last too long because, again, we get back into our daily routine and then have to wait for another vacation. If we can find a way of becoming new every day, if we can find a way of becoming new every minute, that would be wonderful. And that's what retreats will help us do. They'll help us become new. They will take away what really weighs us down are not nowadays we don't really too much have to carry our lot of weight, physical weight nowadays, but the weight of worries, anxieties, fears, that's a weight that's a big load that we are all carrying. But once we have opportunities for retreat, are able to reflect, to review, to reaffirm and to renew, we'll find this weight reducing. And then we become much lighter. And as they say that when you become lighter, the world becomes brighter. So what we see outside, as I again and again say, is so much through the prism, the filter of our own mind. So 4 Re's: review, reflect, reaffirm, and renew. So I'll leave you with this idea. Try to find out whether you are making the best opportunities that you get in your life to review your life, to reflect over it, to reaffirm your goals, your ideals, and to renew yourself. So one of the reasons why we have this Antar Yoga once every month was to provide that retreat. Antar means inner, yoga means joining. So it's joining with my inner self. That's what Antar Yoga means. So we have it one Sunday every month. Now that is an opportunity. Now that we can make the best use of that opportunity if on that day of the Antar Yoga we make a conscious effort to say, let me then now use this time to review, to reflect, to reaffirm and renew. So through the music that we have, the readings that we have, the reflection that we have, the periods of meditation that we have, we can practice all 4 of these. In fact, it's not just once a month. Every visit to a place of worship, you go to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a temple, wherever you go and pray, every such visit, every time that you spend in any place of worship can be seen as a retreat. And if you practice prayer, japa, meditation every day, at home or anywhere, that also is a personal retreat. You are retreating within your mind. So use all of these opportunities to practice, to review your life, to reflect over it, to reaffirm and to renew. Because only through such practice will we become strong. We need to be strong. There are challenges in life, there are challenges in outer life, there are challenges, greater challenges in inner life. So strength is a must. That is why one of the things that Swami Vivekananda often used to say is, strength, strength. This is what the Upanishads speak to me from every page. So that is the central message of Vedanta, is how to be strong. Because only when we are strong, we can face both outer challenges and inner challenges, and then become victorious, so to speak, in the struggle for life. Swami Vivekananda was once asked this question, what is life? And he said that life is a struggle. It's an effort of a living being to overcome the external forces trying to put the being down. And it is a struggle. There is no denying the fact. And only those who are brave, who are strong, who don't give up, they are the ones who succeed. The rest become defeated. Now, none of us want to be defeated in this struggle for life. If we want to be strong, if we want to be successful, then a retreat will be helpful. It will be helpful not just in a spiritual sense, but in every sense. In every way, a retreat would be a great thing. And so we need to find creative opportunities in our daily life to retreat. And as Sri Ramakrishna said, retreat in your mind, in the corner of your room or your home, or in some secluded spot, and become strong. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu. We bow down to Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. So next Sunday we'll have a retreat. We'll have Antar Yoga. As usual, there'll be a special program with many of you are already familiar by this time. We'll have a spiritual readings, we'll have a lot of music and a lot of opportunity to reflect and pray and meditate. So you're welcome next Sunday for this Antar Yoga. On Wednesday, we will continue with the study of the Gita. Presently, we are studying chapter 6. So that will be at 7:30 on Wednesday. And on Tuesday and Saturday, we'll have Arati and meditation at 6 o'clock. So you're welcome for all of these programs. We'll conclude with a prayer now on page 3 of your book. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.